about wine, but that's what my wife drinks. So I go in there and I go, look, she wants a light red. Give me some light reds that are about this amount of money. And he takes me to the spot in the store. He says, this is the one you want. You want to try this one? I say, boom. I take it home. The wife drinks it and she goes, that was delicious. And I said, thank you. And I take all the credit. So thank you, Sinkers, for giving me all the goodwill with the wife. And of course, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Of course, if you have any big issues with your house, or you're about to sell your house, or you're about to buy a house, you're going to do a renovation. You're thinking about doing a renovation. If you're thinking about doing a renovation, just make sure you talk to the Kingston Group first, buildkg.com, and go check out their social accounts. You can see their work there. I think it speaks for itself. It's spectacular. It's as good as anything you'll see on these home renovation shows. In fact, I think it's better. So it's like home reno. I'm not going to use that word. I don't think Kingston Group wants that word in the ad read there, so to speak. So I'll just change where I'm going with this. Just go look at their Instagram account. Go look at their Twitter account. It's pretty cool stuff. So, and the website's pretty good too, buildkg.com. All right. Before we get into, there's a couple of pieces of information that I think you need to know when consuming and reading Teron Davenport's piece about Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel's relationship. Number one, the interview was conducted on November 9th, which was 3 days before the Tampa Bay game, where they played terrible football, before the Jacksonville game, before the Diana Rossini report that Mike Vrabel is not going anywhere, and before the Greg Bedard report that said that raised some questions about how they're working together.
But after the Patriots Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor thing.
Yes. So one of the most important pieces of information here is that Teron Davenport probably didn't decide when this was going to go up. He probably didn't. Certainly the Titans did not.
Listen, ESPN pushed it 3 times last week.
Right.
He went on his podcast talking with TD, said it was going to be out on Friday. And then on Thursday, he went on Stillman's show, and they pushed it back to Saturday. And then on Friday, he went on Robbie and Rex Road, and then told us it was going to be on Tuesday.
So again,
it's all ESPN.
There's a lot of things at play here. There's a large-scale, big-picture PR strategy from the Tennessee Titans. We can have that conversation. There is a media conversation about why, the Teron versus with ESPN and his editors, and when they decided, I don't know why ESPN decided to wait and sit on it for as long as they did. Maybe it's because of all this other stuff that's been taking place. But because all this stuff has come out, and now this story comes out, and it's this kumbaya, Rand and Mike love each other kind of story, that it looks like it's a reaction to all of the news that has been coming out. And the average fan is going to read it and go, oh, they're just saying all this shit because they've been getting all this stuff in the press. It's important to note, again, remember, Teron talked to Rand and Mike a long time ago. So I find it very interesting. But perception is reality, Zach. And the vast majority of people that read this aren't going to know all those details. They're not going to know all the times that Teron thought this was going to go live on the .com. I do have and then there's a third conversation, which is there's some things in the story that I go, wait a second. Why is Rand Carthon taking 11 and a half months to get to know his coach? Like there's other things in the story we can talk about too. So I just
think that's really what is said in there at all. But I will say this: most fans have taken a different approach than what you think they're taking. Most fans, I mean, when TD posted the thing, there was a bunch of, I knew that there wasn't anything wrong with the Tennessee Titans. I knew all that stuff was fake, all through his replies and all this stuff. And so it went complete opposite of what you would assume. I think people in the media are more likely to take it like you think, like, oh, well, I think everybody's going to assume that this is a direct response because, I mean, until this morning, until Joe Rexrode said that he talked to Teron, and you have also talked to Teron, that it felt like it was a direct response. And then come to find out that it was before the Tampa Bay game. I mean, it kind of renders a lot of this stuff. It doesn't really change anything for me because here's what I got out of it. And it's been kind of my takeaway from this whole thing anyway, is that you got two people who have never worked together, who have no prior working relationship, trying to find what works for them, whether that is the power structure or communication, the way of doing things, the way of the particular language used, the processes in place. they're figuring each other out. They're in a very much a um, it's like you just moved in with your ex-girlfriend and you're trying to figure out what you can get away with, who puts up the dishes and stuff like that. How do you guys like your, what cabinet are we going to use and
Why
whose
are you
closet
moving
is
in
this?
with your ex-girlfriend?
Oh, well, whatever. Anyway, so I look at it and I go, okay, so Rand says it's Mike Vrabel's team. When you think of the Titans, you think of Mike Vrabel. I got to learn to work with Mike Vrabel, or I got to figure everything out. Okay, so it's Mike Vrabel's team. So we're confirmed. That is confirmed. Out of Rand's mouth to your ears, or to Tehran's typing keyboard, this is Mike Vrabel's team. Mike Vrabel has final say. That is nothing new. We all expected it this whole time. We assumed that was going to be the case no matter what GM they brought in. They're working for Mike Vrabel. Okay, no big deal. My confusion really lies with the whole Kevin Byard part of the story is just so fucking weird to me. The trade is announced at the trade deadline, right near the trade deadline, 2:30 that day on October 23rd. It is made official and announced by the Tennessee Titans at 8 o'clock that night. So October 20th. The press conference is 11 a.m. the next day, October 24th. He's still faxing stuff he's still writing letters, doing paperwork. No, he's just not going out there and answering the questions. Right. And to me, that's fine, but that tells me that this was a Mike Vrabel initiated trade, a Mike Vrabel approved trade, and Mike Vrabel felt that he needs to be the one to stand out there and take the question because he bears the majority of the responsibility. But it's just weird. It's weird to put that in there because it makes Rand sound like, well, I can't trust Chad Brinker to do this, or I can't trust, 20-year vet Vin Marino to do this. I have to do the secretary work. That's what it sounds like.
Well, so yes, I completely agree with your first point on that. And somebody in the comments already, Ed says, puff piece, why not use Wyatt to put out that story? If I just use that phrase, that's not what I should rephrase that. I think Tehran did a fine job reporting this and getting the interview. But Jim Wyatt if Jim Wyatt writes the story, it's going to be viewed a certain way because he works for the team. I think Tehran has not been told how to write this story. Tehran can write whatever he wants to write, and that's a huge difference. I agree with you on that part, and I think there's another quote that's even earlier in the story where it basically said, Rand says, "I'm not an ego person, so I don't care about control. Who has the final say?"
Yeah, that creates Vrabel has the final say,
right? That creates dissension. Miss Amy trusts us to do our jobs. I think it's pretty clear who's making the decisions on this, and I think that piece explained it. The thing I was right, exactly. The thing I was getting at with the learning your team is, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he basically is like, ultimately, this kind of gets to a Rand Carthon public relations strategy, because this doesn't make the Titans look good either that it came out when it did, because it looks like they're being super reactionary. If you're a fan who just reads this stuff and goes hook, line, and sinker onto it, then that's fine. You can be like that. But I don't think most fans are like that. I think they understand that there's some working growing pains here, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be success. Again, the guy's first draft class has been excellent so far. The vast majority of the free agents have been high value in terms of value and acquisition and productivity, pretty solid. Like, the guy's job so far to build a team better than what it was when he got here, it's been good. The one line about how he's got to still learn what a Mike Vrabel coach team looks like and feels like and sounds like.
I needed to learn what it's going to take to play for a Mike Vrabel coach team. I needed. Doesn't say he needs to still, or I still gotta. I needed. I got the exact quote right up here.
Okay, well, that to me, I don't know. Again, if that's still, it sounds like your assumption is that that's past tense and as it's written, and that he's no longer doing any of that. I think if you're
and I'm sure there is still some things he's learning. I mean, you're not going to know I learn shit about my wife every day, new shit about my wife every day. But that's of course it's what it was going to be. Like, you're a new GM with no ties to Mike Vrabel and this coach, no ties to this team. Of course, you're going to have to learn what's going to take to play for Mike Vrabel.
I understand a first-time general manager curating his public persona very carefully. I get that. I think it's gone way too far on all of this. I think there's so many things, and Vrabel doesn't do himself favors in this department either. I think there's so many ways to sort of let the steam out of the pot, or the air out of the balloon, or pick a cliche that you want to use. Like Rand does the press conference for Kevin Byard trade. Rand does the press conference for other things. Rand is a little bit more available, helps the way things are viewed through the lens of the fan base and the media. And again, I just think, the way that all the leaks happened around the trade deadline and the combine and the draft and all that stuff, it's like there's just a lot of things that maybe he could polish up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's a little that is kind of what it is. I do think that Mike Vrabel could also help this process out and just like make a fucking joke about the weather in New England. Just step to the podium and be like, "Oh God, the weather's terrible this time of year in New England. Who would want to live there?" Like, just say that at a press conference. And
We'll workshop that because that's a horrible joke.
well, no, but
I get what you're saying.
it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to dispel the rumors in like a lighthearted way, so that every time like you and I sit on here and go, well, there's rumors that the Patriots might want to be trading for Mike Vrabel, but it's like, well, he kind of always alludes to the fact that he likes it down here in Nashville better. And it doesn't, does that make sense? Like, you have to include.
Yeah, but then you're going to have to force him to lie through all that because obviously he loves Boston more than Nashville. Look,
does he?
At the end of the day, yeah. Well, obviously. At the end of the day, it's up to Carthon to figure out how to best do his job to Vrabel's liking. But also, Vrabel's got to start realizing the experience of Carthon and the value and trusting him more to do his job without micromanaging. And that to me is where we're at, is that Vrabel's got to trust Carthon enough to do his job. And Carthon is in the process of what it seems, and it will constantly be learning new things about what Mike Vrabel wants, what Mike Vrabel needs as the team evolves and changes over the next few years. It's like we've always said, we're not saying that it can't ever get fixed. It's just it was at least off to a rocky start, and it still seems that they're still in a feeling out phase of sorts.
I guess and that's where ultimately my point about the timing of this is. Like, I understand the human element of this, that it takes people time, but like, if you're a professional general manager candidate in the NFL level, it shouldn't take you 11 months to feel some shit out. You should figure that out in a couple of weeks. Like, if you need to know what the business culture is, or how to work with people, or how to communicate, I understand some of those things can take some time. But again, I just think that we're pretty far down the road here for them to still be trying to figure out how to like work together. I think I understand.
I don't think so.
Oh, that's fair.
I don't think so.
I think
that's I think that's something that comes with time as a business owner and stuff, hiring a general manager and learning to work with them, especially someone that I never knew. Hiring sales employees, it takes time to get everything and work out the kinks. And I know maybe everything needs to be accelerated in the NFL. But for their first off season as a whole, whatever they did worked more often than not. So it's just going to get better as it goes on. And once some of these scout contracts expire, and some of these J-Rob loyalists get out of the building, I think there was a lot of people that were loyal to J-Rob. The more I think about it and the more I get removed from some of the stuff that got leaked out over the summer, I think there's a lot of loyalists from J-Rob that are leaking this stuff to make Rand look bad. And that's just it's my little conspiracy theory and my little world. But that's what I'm kind of feeling. And I feel like once those guys are outside the building, take off. And listen, you got to let contracts expire, I guess, because Amy's cheap. I don't know. She doesn't want to pay 2 scouts or something like that. I don't know. But either way, Rand's people are not fully in the system yet. Right. And once Rand has more people in the system, we're looking good.
Right, which also raises the question: why didn't that happen after the draft? Like, I would say that
sounds like to me, from what I've heard from other people, that it is a business financial decision based from someone on high.
Well, if it's about the money, that's ridiculous, because the scouts aren't exactly making
the
scouts aren't making $1 million a pop. I will say that almost all the reporting on this has come from outside of the building, though. And a lot of those John Robinson guys that you may be talking about are also like Vrabel people as well.
Some of them.
So
there could be some overlap.
There's plenty of overlap. So what's interesting, again, I think what's interesting is that Rand, and I assume maybe next year or at some time during this offseason, like even in the story, he's like, oh, I like to do everything on background. This is Mike Vrabel's time of year. In the middle of a long sit down, publicly orchestrated article about your relationship with the coach during the season. So even that's a contradiction.
It's funny, you know, how everybody complained that Rand sat down with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution guy.
Behind a paywall.
Tehran actually put in the request to talk to Rand. So it sounds like maybe a little bit of the media needs to start doing a little bit more groundwork, I guess I would say, or legwork. I would also say this. Can I say this? This is a totally different subject, but tied to local media. I am going to be so fucking glad when Derrick Henry does not have to do another Titans presser. It will be a glorious day for my ears because I am so sick of the ridiculous, lame questions that they ask Derrick Henry week in and week out every year. I mean, some of the questions today that he got asked, you know, I mean, what's your favorite memory as a Tennessee Titan? Do you remember who the first person was that put a crown on your head?
Was he in a hospital?
The first time someone gave you a jelly bean? Like these fucking ridiculous questions. I will be so happy that there will never be a there's never going to be a Derrick Henry press conference again, because they ask the same ridiculous questions. They ask no questions of substance to these players, and it drives me insane that they don't ask Derrick Henry anything of substance. Ugh, it's the worst. It's the worst press conference they do every year.
Couple of comments here. Green Thumb. Another reason that Amy Adams is not firing Vrabel, she's not going to pay 2 HCs and 2 GMs. No, that's not what would happen. What would happen is they would fire Vrabel, and then Rand would hire the general manager. And I don't think anyone right now, inside or outside of the building, fan or Titan, wants that to be the case. I think they would be stupid to get rid of Vrabel. They'd be stupid.
You're misinterpreting what she's saying, or he. I think Green Thumb. She's saying that because they're still paying John Robinson right now. John Robinson, but Mike Vrabel would get a job, and that whatever he gets paid there offsets whatever they owe him.
Gotcha.
That's what they're trying to say right there.
D Good says they're still in the growing pains phase. That is where Zach and I, it sounds like, disagree. I don't think that should still be happening 11 months into being one of 32 general managers in the NFL. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be things you have to learn and get better at. But and I get it, it's a first time job for him, but you have to know at week 12, week 13, with the Bears, 11 months in. With the
Vikings, they all went through their growing pain phase and all that kind of stuff, and still learning out. You can go read all kinds of articles about it, so it's not very uncommon.
Maybe it's not, but there's still
you have a higher standard.
There's still stuff that's coming out in a strange, weird way. Some of that is all outside of our market and outside of their control and our control. And it's important to note that as well, that some of this is all coming from Boston and New England and the Crafts and the Patriots and, other media sources and other sources outside of their control.
Titans PR has been a disaster for a decade. I mean, it's been one of my biggest complaints about this team is that they have no clue how to handle anything and no foresight into no foresight, no activeness. They're not proactive. They've always been reactive.
Yes.
And sometimes they're not active at all. And that's not a technically that is a PR department and ownership thing in my book. Like, someone's got to get that all fixed and get that all changed. And I will never be able to get a media credential for the Tennessee Titans because I badmouth the person that is supposed to give out the media credentials. But they're just kind of sitting on their hands more often than not.
And look, I know Robbie personally, so it's not Robbie's fault that Rand Carthon doesn't come out for the Kevin Byard press conference. That is a Rand Carthon decision.
It depends on how much he's pushing for it.
There is a power structure, and the head of PR cannot make the general manager in any NFL office do anything they don't want to do. I think this is on the general manager to sort of evolve and adapt a little bit and learn how to message better. Again, PR is not the most important job. The most important job is drafting players and signing free agents. And if that hadn't been great right now through 12 games, we'd be having a very different conversation because so far the draft class is very good and the free agents look like good value. Azeez Al-Shaair looks like a good value decision. Arden Key looks like a solid value decision. Andre Dillard, pretty bad. Sean Murphy-Bunting, solid value decision. And he's got a whole lot more work to do in the offseason. he also has some work to do in sort of cultivating his PR strategy. And when he figures that out, maybe that's what he's still working on. This story coming out at this time after all this news is not a good look for anybody. It just isn't. And it's not real. It's not necessarily real. It should have come out 3 weeks ago, and then nobody would say anything. Right. So it is what it is. Anyway, let's talk about second half offenses and Will Levis. We'll get to a preview of the Dolphins game. But you did so much work on this that I think it's worth diving into this whole thing. So I don't want to give too much away here because I want you to shine here, Big Zach. Go to Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group, of course. Please shop at Sinkers and their sister store, Bluegrass, up in Hendersonville. Both places, liquor store of the year 2 times in a row. Sinkers Beverages, back-to-back champs. So make sure you go there. They got great selections of everything you could possibly want. Tons of tequilas, tons of bourbons. Vodka is basically vodka, but they have a lot of it. Wine and beer and all kinds of cool stuff. So we'll get in there. So go to Sinkers and then Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm, award-winning, I might add. So when you went into there's a lot of different things you evaluated. You can evaluate you can evaluate receivers. You can evaluate play calling. You can evaluate offensive linemen. You can evaluate running game. You can evaluate the quarterback. You can evaluate a lot of things. You did it all, Zach. And what was ultimately your conclusion about why the Tennessee Titans are struggling in the second half with Will Levis as the quarterback?
So let me ask you this. If based off just watching the games at home, that's normally how you do it, right? You just watch on your TV, the broadcast or whatever. And because we kind of talked about this for the last couple of weeks, and I've talked about it with Stoney and everything else as well, but we're just kind of like, what is this issue in the second half? And we're kind of thinking it's like Tim Kelly and stuff. And I think I would rank it like offensive line, Tim Kelly, wide receivers, and Will Levis. Like, how would you have ranked it before reading my piece?
So I've always been more pro Tim Kelly than you. And a lot of the
during this Levis time.
Yeah, and Easton when he filled in for you, he was kind of critical of Tim Kelly as well. I would have probably gone offensive line 1, Will Levis 2, receivers 3, Tim Kelly 4. That would probably have been my order.
I'll see now, based on all this research, I do Will Levis 1, offensive line 2, wide receivers 3, Tim Kelly 4. So I'd put Tim Kelly back on there. And I mean, I can readily admit that after starting to do the research, going back and watching the film, and because I rewatched some games and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I just assumed that kind of like that Tim Kelly must be limiting the playbook, or must be calling the wrong plays, or he's doing this and he's doing that. And you go back and watch, and there's still guys getting schemed open. I mean, we're talking, I'll have some research coming up probably next week, but I'm looking at, they're facing a lot of zone and they're being very successful in zone. He's scheming up plays and these wide receivers that are open, and he's taking advantage of that, except for the quarterback's not taking advantage of it. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's the offensive line. It's got to be the offensive line. It's got to be number one, right? And listen, because we're talking about the team's performance. We're not talking about their performance versus the rest of the NFL. We're taking the team in a vacuum. We're taking this offense in a vacuum, right? Because I didn't do really any rankings except for one little section. But we're talking about, does the team get better in the second half or get worse in the second half? Because they're playing the same opponent these games, right? It's not like, you have one opponent in the first half and you have a different opponent in the second half.
Unless the NFL has drastically changed their style of scheduling. No, so your point is that this is not relative to the rest of the NFL. This is
not relative to the rest of the NFL.
Second half Titans.
Yeah, because if you look at it, the offensive line gets better in the second half.
Now that is
they pass more, and they have a higher pass rate in the second half. So that is what is mind-boggling to me. Like, it goes, and listen, it's still bad, right? We're talking about it goes from a 46.7% pressure rate to a 39.6% pressure rate, an 11.3% sack rate to a 6.9% sack rate. And that's really all because of the two tackles. The interior offensive line gets way better in the second half. Jalen Duncan gets better in the second half. It's Dylan Raines that gets worse in the second half. But those numbers go down and you're passing more, right? So the rate even though you're passing more, your rate is better. So it's not necessarily the offensive line, even though it's bad, is staying bad. It's way worse in the
So
first half. And they're way better.
I want to kind of work through each piece of this and make sure we clear,
Yeah.
like, offensive line, first half during the Will Levis time frame, not the Ryan Tannehill time frame, but Will Levis. The pressure rate, the pass rate, and what was the first one? The 46 to 39. What was the first one you said?
It's pressure rate. Okay, pressure rate and sack rate.
Pressure rate, sack rate, and the number of times they're throwing the football. There's more times throwing the football, more protected in the second half. The offensive line gets better in the second half on passing situations.
Now, I'm talking about passing rates because we are just talking about 106 dropbacks versus 102 dropbacks. So it's not that big of a difference. But the rate of passes on these drives is higher. So, I mean, they're passing more, getting protected more. So I'm like, okay, well, it's got to be the wide receivers, Sam, right? It's got to be the wide receivers.
Well, they're not very.
They just came off a bunch of drops. Yeah. They just got a bunch of drops, right? Well, he suffers the same rate of drops in the first half and as the second half. So it doesn't matter if it's first or second, he's seeing the same amount of rate of drops over these last 6 games. Okay, well, maybe it's because, they're not getting open or whatever. Well, you look at the completion percentage over expected. That includes the drops, right? So, like, your next gen stats is the best completion percentage over expected that I'm going to start using here on because I've done some research this week. And they use the tracking data of wide receiver separation, of the defender, and all this stuff. And even if you drop it, they still have an expected completion percentage rate, right? They expected Will Levis in the Colts game, for example, to be 63.3% completion rate. He was 14.8. He was 48.5. So there was a 14.8 difference. That is from him. That is a him issue because they expected him to get 63.3. If you took drops out of it, and said, like, if everything went perfectly, he would have been 69.4. So, like, here, easy way to put it. What it is, this is for this season, okay? For his 6 games. He's currently sitting at 57.8% completion percentage. It's expected he should be at 63.4. If everything went perfect, it's 69.4. So, like, that is where we're at, is like, if everything went perfect, he should have a 69.4 completion percentage through these 6 games. But that is a big difference in just what is between what is expected and what it is. And if you look at the second half, Braden, it is 63.7% completion percentage in the first half. In the second half, it drops to 52.1%. That is
12%.
an insane amount of droppage between a half.
So I want to ask
that is
you,
on him.
The follow-up is going to be, so, like, why is that happening? But I want to get to that in a second because the offensive line is slightly better, still not great, but slightly better at protecting the quarterback in the second halves than they are in the first halves over these 6 games. The receivers are dropping passes at the exact same rate with which they drop them in the first half. So the receivers they're not changing. The scheme is putting them in positions to make plays, get open, separation about the same in the first half and in the second half. So we're starting
same playbook.
We've eliminated all the variables here. And the last one, and this is like the thing that comes to my mind, was the Panthers game. 17 points in the first half, none in the second half. They figured out a way to win. But I think it was like 4 straight third downs in a row where Will Levis made a bad throw or a bad read and just missed. And I remember saying that on the show. I think it was with you. And I was like, I just saw him go, like, teams make adjustments. Defensive players, it may only take a half for a defensive player who's a really good linebacker or a really good safety or a really good pass rusher to pick up on something that all of a sudden makes them better in the second half. Like, Tim Kelly's doing a good job scripting things in the first half. Like, it's not complicated. And I think you can see it. Like, the throw to DeAndre Hopkins this past weekend, just out of bounds, like, just a couple different times. Like, it doesn't mean he doesn't make some really elite throws at times. He does. But I think I would have thought offensive line for sure was worse in the second half because they're in passing situations. The defense knows that. So they're pinning their ears back and they're coming after the quarterback. That's what I would have thought. Then I would have been like, well, he's missed a ton of third down throws. He against the Panthers in particular. He's had some throws against the Bucks where it should have been intercepted. He had some throws against the Jags, should have been intercepted. Yes, Chig dropped a pass in the end zone. That's probably, I would have gone through all that stuff before I would have gotten to Tim Kelly. But I'm more pro Tim Kelly than probably everybody else is. And so it sounds
Well,
like
I mean,
what we're saying.
I'm back to where I'm at. Like I was back to
Okay.
where I was at the beginning of the year. Is that and I never was a fire Tim Kelly guy. I was like open up the playbook. But now you're seeing why they're not opening up the playbook. And we're talking about in week 10 versus the Buccaneers. He was 48.7% completion percentage when he should have been 64.4. He was 48.5 this last week, and he's supposed to be 63.3. Like those, when you have games like those that you were in, that's on you. Now, those are his two most dropped games as well. But if you take up the drops, those go even higher. So you can't use drops as a full on reason. You got to use accuracy, and this is something that is going to get better. So Josh Allen, I put up Josh Allen's stats. He's trending better than Josh Allen's full season as a rookie. He's trending better in almost everything except for pressure to sack percentage, which obviously because this offensive line definitely is worse than the Bills' offensive line. And his EPA per play is low right now because he doesn't run as much as Josh Allen did. So that is where we're kind of at right now, is that we're trending to see a better passer than Josh Allen. The thing that's got to change is, I don't know if you would describe it as mental or emotional, but this idea that he's got to play hero ball. This pushing, he's pushing and pushing instead of just taking what's coming to him. And that's been something that has been talked about by him, something that's been talked about the coaches. It's been this whole, you saw it in Kentucky, he pushes. He plays hero ball, and that's fine. I don't want to break him of the hero ball mentality. I want to harness that into better decision making.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately.
You can play here. Listen, ask Tom Brady. You can play hero ball by Deacon and Duncan.
Yeah. He has the, like, he is innately like wired to be that way in a competitive leadership standpoint. In my opinion, I think he is wired to be like, got to do something to carry my team. Got to do something. We got to get out of this. It's 3rd and long. Yes. Oh, we're down by 3. We're down. Like it is how he's wired. It's how he is made as a competitor. And I think that's a good thing. To your point, you don't want to break. I do think when you are, I think there's a couple positives here. Rookie quarterbacks tend to throw a ton of interceptions, just in general. It's very normal. He's not doing that. Like there's been a couple that should have been intercepted, but he's really not. And the one against Pittsburgh was sort of a required throw at that point. So like you kind of can take that one off the table even. So I think what's interesting is he is playing this. He has this instinct to be a hero and to try to do the hero ball thing. I think you're right. He needs to harness it and be a little bit more controlled with that stuff. But he's also still not making the major mistake either. Now, does that make sense? Like his interception rate, I think, is better than CJ Stroud's. His completion percentage is the worst.
I think it's the least in
the best in the NFL.
Mistake.
He's got the lowest completion percentage of all qualified starting quarterbacks. So that's the thing that will get better. Is he ever going to be like a Drew Brees 71% completion guy? No, that's not what he is. But can you go from 57 your rookie year to 64 for your career? Absolutely. Absolutely you can. And that might be good enough if you have the big enough arm, because I think this is ultimately the point of the hero ball stuff. He still does connect on a few of those big shots. He still does give his receivers an opportunity. And he's not turning the ball over while doing that. So I think we can say, look, second half offensive problems, it's on the rookie quarterback who's in his 7th start. He's missing some open receivers, making some bad reads. He's pushing the ball. He's forcing it a few times. He's a little inaccurate. All normal and natural things to be happening in your 7th fucking start. So learn from it all. Keep going with it all. Obviously, you want the offensive line to get better as a whole. Tim Kelly right now, and I think Herndon said this on your show on F Words, and I completely agree, and I've said it on this show, the last thing, and this goes to Vrabel too, the last thing you want to do to Will Levis is have him have to start all over again. You have Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly and Charles London. Keep that group intact with Will Levis. Put better pieces around him. Give him some reps, and I bet you that production goes up.
Yeah, to me, at the very end of this piece, I said I'm, typing, this all up, and I'm talking about, it's all correctable. I think once Levis realizes the hero ball mentality is not necessarily needed or learns how to harness it, you got to remember the game will slow down for him. It's, I'm sure it's probably pretty slow compared to other rookie quarterbacks because he played in the SEC, played a pro style offense, but it will slow down for him as the time goes on. I think that Mike also made a really great point about, you got to remember he was splitting practices with the second and third string splitting reps in those practices in the offseason. So, Ryan Tannehill got all the first team reps. So now he'll head into an offseason where he doesn't have to worry about that. And the supporting cast will be better in 2024. So, I mean, like, at the end of the day, he's got stuff to work on, but I'm still fucking hype. As long as for me, it's like, as long as he keeps showing us these flashes of his arm talent, which he does every game, there's like 2 or 3 throws where you're just like, holy shit, I don't know if there's maybe like 5 quarterbacks that can make that throw.
Yep.
And he keeps improving in critical areas that we need to see him improve in. And if he's at the end of the year trending way better than Josh Allen, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, you get him a Stephon Diggs, you get him an offensive line, you're cooking.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree, and it's okay. I think this is 2 things can be true. Like, it's okay that he's having these problems. Like, I mean, they are his problems, but it's okay that he's having the problems right now. These are coachable.
Yes.
These are coachable moments in a rookie season that are
There's
fairly
nothing that can't be fixed.
Right. It's fairly not. Now, I think it's also important to note, like, the Titans certainly love the deep ball and the big shot because he's capable of giving that to him, unlike that maybe Mike Vrabel's ever had. Some of those smash routes, those corner routes that he hits to Hopkins are just absolutely perfect. I mean, they're just insane. 22 yards down the field, opposite hash on a rope, 1 step before the sideline. Like, that's just something that very few people can do. The other thing is that we talk about adjustments in a game. You learn how to do that as a player in the NFL. Like, you learn how to go from play 1 to play 50 and learn how to beat your guy throughout the course of a game, or learn tendencies of an opposition player throughout the course of a game. And a lot of times what a rookie quarterback will do is step in with a game plan and a scouting report, and it takes them a long time to sort of figure out how to evolve off of that scouting report throughout the course of a game, whereas a professional safety or linebacker already knows how to adjust to tendencies that they're seeing for the first time. So he's going to learn how to adjust better in the game. And that's part of just getting reps. So I don't think you should ever expect him to be like 68% for the rest of his career. I don't think he's just not I don't know what again, Drew Brees is like the most accurate quarterback I can think of. He's never going to be that. So you kind of have to hold your upside in like that 65, 66 range. And if he can hit those numbers somewhere close to that, he's probably going to give you a good chance to win a lot of games. So it's all on Will Levis to adapt and evolve, but also not a huge concern. So no. I think that's where we're at. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, our title sponsor. Monday night, you've got the Dolphins and the Titans down in Miami. Can you make the case for the Tennessee Titans to compete and win against the top seed in the AFC?
Yeah, all they got to do is take out Tyreek Hill, make sure that he, find a way to maybe that he doesn't get to the stadium or something. If you have, outside of like these guys getting injured, it's not happening. I can't. There is no case to make. I mean,
46 minutes time of possession.
I have nothing.
46 minutes time of possession. 47 rushing attempts. Drain the clock from the first drive. And pray for rain. I don't know.
I mean, good luck. I mean, at this point, I don't think there is a way that this team can run the ball on them and have the success that you're looking for. It's going to be very tough. This is a good defensive front. They got they're opening up holes and run lanes for their linebackers to come crashing through. This offensive line is the Browns game was ugly. I don't know really what to say other than
You think it's gonna be worse than the
I
Browns
really
game?
don't have anything. Like I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's 48-14. Like I think it's going
Oh
to be
shit!
ugly,
Really?
and yeah, and it's going to be ugly, and everybody's going to want to fire Vrabel again. We're going to have to hear the same stuff we're going to have to hear that we've heard the last 3 weeks. Shane Bowen should get fired. They should have kept David Long, because David Long would have changed everything for this defense. It's like people aren't even watching the games if they think a linebacker is really going to change everything for this fucking defense. It ain't fucking Ray Lewis, and he ain't bringing Ed Reed with him. There's nothing that David Long is going to change.
Speaking of like,
there's
speaking
nothing.
of speaking of
building a win, good luck.
Yeah.
Go to Kingston. Let me just say this: building a win, buildkg.com. You'll have more fun with them than watching the game. Go and hang out at buildkg.com. plan some house remodeling and something, because the only thing that you're going to be able to build a win on from this segment are on the backs of the good people at buildkg.com, because it's not going to be for the Tennessee Titans.
And flip over and watch
0%. I am giving them 0.1% chance of winning this game.
Okay. Well, now I forgot what I was going to say. Speaking
probably
of
something about Monty Rice, right?
Yes. Speaking of bad PR strategies, Monty fucking Rice, dude. Like, it's so. First of all, we'll be on again. Reminder: we'll be on after the game to react to whatever godforsaken score takes place between the Titans and the Dolphins. By the way, I think it was 45-15 last week for the Dolphins and Commanders, which I believe was a scoregami, which means it's never been done before. 1,082 different NFL scores all time. So that's kind of cool. I don't know what that means. Monty Rice, like, just I don't know who's in his camp or who he cares about or who he relies on.
He's probably still on his 4th or 5th agent. I mean, he had 3 agents heading into the draft.
Like, is it not like, don't you in high school or college, when you're like learning to do a resume or how to do job interviews, like, isn't there a part of the conversation that goes like, look, I've been fired twice from 2 different companies, and I'm not sure I've ever publicly told the entire story from either of them. You want to know why I haven't done that? Because it's fucking stupid. You don't go out, like, if you want to work in the business, you don't trash people that publicly. It doesn't make any sense. It's like PR 101. You do the whole thing like, hey, my time here was great. I learned a whole lot about X, Y, and Z. I can't wait to get back into the weight room and train, and I'm looking forward to whatever opportunity comes. Like, it's the easiest PR shit ever. Just say that. I enjoy the hot chicken in Nashville.
I mean, this guy should never been drafted. This is just more proof that John Robinson, you talk about Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel trying to figure out if they're on the same page and how to get on the same page. I think the draft class shows they're on the same page. You go back and look at the 2020, 2021, 2022 draft classes, you're looking at a bunch of players that do not make sense for Mike Vrabel. I mean, more often than not, you probably got 6 guys out of there that you could probably label Mike Vrabel guys out of like 23. So,
I mean,
John Robinson and him were not on the same page.
That's my ultimate takeaway from the draft classes, were that there was a clear personnel decision-making line of command under John Robinson, and it was John Robinson. And that this is
John Robinson talking into a mirror to John Robinson about guys that don't love football. I mean, this is a guy that does not love football. And people want to talk about, well, why didn't they develop him? Well, they developed Jack fucking Gibby, and he's a crackerback linebacker that fucking is unathletic as shit, but he has at least the dedication to go out and do his fucking job and try his best. I think you can tell when he talks about Jalen Duncan, when Mike Vrabel talks about Jalen Duncan, we have a guy that wants to be out there. He wants to fight. He wants to do this. And then here goes Monty Rice out the door, right? That same freaking week, here goes Monty Rice out the door. And, people talk about 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. guys. One of the first people I said was it's probably Monty Rice. And really, I'm probably wrong. He's probably more of an 8:16 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. kind of guy.
Well, by the way, can we at least tell people?
Far up his own ass, he wants everybody else to watch the tape, and everybody's posting all these bad clips out of. He's only had 17 tackles. 17 tackles while he was here. 3 years.
So
what the fuck?
I suppose we should actually, and I didn't even write it down because that's how stupid it was. I suppose we should actually tell people. Like he took to Twitter and he
Thank
basically,
God.
he
That's what
basically,
he
what did
said.
he say? He said, "Thank God," and then there was like a
Yeah.
tape don't lie or something was the second tweet or something like
Yeah.
that. And
Watch the tape or something like that.
essentially, just again, you can't go out and troll your former employer and look good doing it. There's no way to look good doing it. And if the tape shows that you don't look good on the field, and then you get cut, and then you go social media again, it's all PR, bad PR 101. So what not to do in a situation where you are a public figure is Monty Rice is what he did.
Yeah,
So
it's another example that players should get off social media, agents, and make them stay off social media because he's a name searcher. He gets into people's DMs and complains and threatens and all this kind of stuff. So he's a loser. He was a loser when he was drafted. He's a loser now.
All right.
Good,
Now you're making it.
good
making it
luck
all.
with the New Orleans Saints. When he lost out to Jack Gibby, all of his high school friends said he deserved it. They went up on his social media.
Serious?
Yeah, they went up on his social media and said it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Wow. Okay.
I think that tells you everything you need to know about Monty Rice.
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's next level. But there you have it. Okay. All right. So watch the game on Monday night and then come hang out with us after the game. Is what we're saying.
Yes.
We won't talk shit to you if you do or if you don't. So
We'll
come on
see.
by. Zach will probably talk shit to me, but that's
I make
fine.
no promises.
All right. I can't tell you who I voted for. I'll tell you next week on Monday night after the game who I voted for. But I don't think it's going to be a very suspenseful vote, if I had to guess. I am curious to see what the order is. The finalists, of course, Bo Nix for Oregon, Michael Penix from Washington. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver at Ohio State, and Jaden Daniels, the quarterback at LSU. There's
a lot of scuttlebutt out there that it's not going to be Jaden Daniels. A lot of scuttlebutt that it's Michael Penix and Marvin Harrison's. They're the top two, and Jaden Daniels is third. A lot of scuttlebutt about that.
Wow.
Okay. That's interesting.
Obviously one of these guys wasn't on my ballot. Two of them were not on my ballot.
Oh, well, that's interesting. That is very interesting. We'll find out what your ballot looked like, but I'm very.
I don't.
So did you only put in two, or did you write in a third? Do you get to write in a third?
You have to write in three names, and you have to fill out three names. Two of them, my top two, are there in New York. My third was not. Is not one of the top four. I imagine my third vote probably ends up fifth or sixth place. Probably. I am a little surprised. I think Bo Nix was way ahead of Michael Penix. Honestly, I thought in terms of their performance, in terms of how consistent they were, how outstanding they were. They didn't win the game because of Michael Penix. They won the game because they ran the football very well and the defense played really well for Washington against Oregon.
But the first game.
They both were equally great in the first game. I thought the whole season, if you're going
to win that first game because of Michael Penix Jr.
to some degree, but Bo Nix, and to some of it was Bo Nix didn't make a few plays on fourth down, but again, the defense got stops for Washington on a bunch of fourth down. So I think if you look at the entire body of work, the way the committee kind of does for teams, I'm not sure how you put Michael Penix ahead of Bo Nix. I don't know how you do that. Marvin Harrison might be I think Marvin Harrison and Brock Bowers might be the two best football players in the game. But Brock Bowers missed a whole lot of time.
Interesting you bring his name up. Is that your write-in?
I think there's a lot of guys that deserve to be written. Bowers didn't play the whole season though, so that's kind of a
I think you could I like your argument, but like what is Heisman MVP? Or is Heisman Offensive Player of the Year? Like, because there's a distinct difference, right? Because your Offensive Player of the Year is the best football player of the year. But your MVP, you would argue that, well, one team is undefeated.
Right.
And then you were kind of using that argument with Bo Nix over Jaden Daniels last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just saying.
Let me ask you a question then, because it's sort of like the wording on the committee's job is to put the four best teams into the playoff, not the four best resumes or the four most deserving teams. Okay. It's the four best teams. They don't give us any direction as voters as to what we are supposed to value. But they give us kind of some.
That seems so odd.
But it's because they want to keep it intentionally vague. They say it is for the most outstanding player in college football. And
Okay.
it allows you to sort of beauty's in the eye of the beholder to some degree on what you believe
Yeah.
makes someone the most outstanding player. It's intentionally not offensive player of the year. That's the Maxwell Award. It is not
That to me sounds like it is offensive player of the year, technically. I mean, it could be offensive player, defensive player of the year. It's the best player in the NFL is typically not your MVP. Like in for the most impressive season.
Yeah.
Because, when Derrick Henry got the offensive player of the year, he was the best player in football, it felt like. At the time, he was unstoppable. And maybe you can make an argument for whoever won defensive player of the year that year, but like that's kind of what I'm getting at. If it's the most outstanding player, are you taking into account that Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, is playing with a proud boy quarterback that's no longer there?
Can't believe that dude.
He just looks like a proud boy.
I can't believe Kyle McCord went into the portal. It's very odd to me that's what happened.
Maybe
by
they
the way,
pushed him into the portal like a Sparta, like in 300.
that's what I think happened. I think they're
Kick him in
going.
there.
I think Ohio State's going big game hunting. They're trying to get a really big name quarterback, and I think that's a bad decision. There's nobody wins the championship in the first year of their transfer year except for Cam Newton. He's the only one that's ever done it. Like otherwise, even Joe Burrow needed a second season. You can't. You're not going to get someone better than Kyle McCord out of the portal. It's not going to. Anyway, that's a different story.
I don't know.
Altogether.
He put me in the portal, and that may be better than Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord is a top 15 quarterback in college football this past year. Like he was not elite. He was. Go look at his numbers. They lost one game by 6 points on the road to Michigan.
How much of that is because of the most outstanding player in college football, Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I don't want to spend time. This is like defending Florida State or Alabama. I don't want to defend Kyle McCord.
Does that play into, like, if you're talking about most outstanding player? Let me ask you this. So you didn't really ask me a question, even though you said you were going to ask me.
What would be your ballot based on most outstanding?
I mean, like, if it's most outstanding, me personally, Jane Daniels was just fucking electric. Now, Michael Penix was too, so I think I would go. Man, it's tough because then I would go into who helped their team more, which maybe is not the way that you should go. I guess if it's most outstanding, I think that. Ooh, that's tough.
I try to balance.
How do you define most outstanding? That's what I was going to ask. Like, how do you define it?
To me, I try to balance all the different factors. It's not dissimilar from what the committee does to a team. You look at a team and you look at the resume, and there's like really good wins, there's margin of victory, there's strength of schedule, there's talent, there's great defensive line versus bad defensive line. Like there's different strengths and weaknesses to a team's resume. I think that's similar to how I look at the Heisman Trophy, which is like I know that Marvin Harrison is a better football player than like the other three guys probably. Like he is better at what he does than what the other three guys do. Yes, it turns into a quarterback award, which I don't love. There's a linebacker at NC State that deserves some love. There's an offensive lineman for Oregon State that deserves some love. Like I wish it was more like that. A couple of years ago, Aiden Hutchinson finished second in the voting. Will Anderson was a top 5 finalist, I think, in that same year. So it does take something special to break the quarterback thing. I do think Marvin Harrison is better at what he does. I know he's a better wide receiver than Michael Penix is a quarterback, for example. So that's something that team success, how big were you in big moments against important teams in big games? And then the Jaden Daniels argument, which is the same argument for Lamar Jackson and Robert Griffin and Tim Tebow, and Caleb Williams last year didn't even win his conference last year. Like the argument is you are just so electric and dynamic and show-stopping that people like you're just clearly the most outstanding. Does that make like I think there's everybody has a different. Penix's strength is that they went undefeated and he led that team to an undefeated season. I don't think he was more outstanding than Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix was far more electric and dynamic and outstanding and frankly more efficient, more productive, more of X, Y, and Z stuff than Michael Penix was. But if you value the team success, that's okay. You can do that. But they also beat Arizona State when the offense didn't score a touchdown. so I thought Michael Penix had too many off nights, too many off games to be considered an elite champion. And Daniels, for example, was great against Alabama until he got hurt. He was great on the road against Missouri. He was great against Ole Miss in a loss. It was the defense that cost him that game, right? The only time in which Jaden Daniels kind of failed his team was the second half against Florida State in week 1. And other than that, he was.
I'm a Jaden Daniels guy. I think Jaden Daniels should be your Heisman. I figured it'd be easy. He's got a 45% big time throw percentage on deep passes of 20 plus yards, and he has a lot of attempts. 16.6% of his attempts went that way versus 11.3% for Bo Nix, who didn't have a lot of attempts go that far. He's 24.5 yards per attempt on those deep passing plays. Bo Nix is 19.4. I mean, like, turnover worthy plays. He had 1 turnover worthy play out of 55 attempts going deep like that. And Bo Nix had 3. And, it's not that big of a difference. But, I mean, to me, it's like when you're looking at all these, if you're looking for the most outstanding player, I think when you take in the rushing, when you take in the deep passing, when you take in what he means for his team, I think they're probably even for what he means for his team. But I think when you take into account the schedule that the LSU played versus the schedule that the Pac-12 has to go through, I don't know. I think most outstanding, I'd go Jaden. I don't think that hasn't changed for me. I could see arguments for everything. I just thought the scuttlebutt around that not being the case, and then Bo Nix being a distant 4th is what it sounds like to me, like from various college people kind of like hinting and talking. I just thought that was very interesting.
Well, there's no way that they should have. There's no way that they should have the results. It is a complicated.
No, I think it's just. I've heard a bunch of people talk about who they would be voting for, or who they have voted for, or alluded to who they voted for. Like, I've heard people talk about, for example, like Brock Bowers is their 3rd.
For example,
just off the top of my head.
Just for example, I do think that if you voted before Championship Saturday, you did it wrong.
Yes,
because Championship Saturday, it absolutely changed my ballot. How about that?
Interesting.
How about that?
I can't wait to see what this ballot looks like.
Saturday changed my ballot in 2 spots. It changed number 1 and it changed number 3. How about that?
I like it.
All right, there you go. We will talk to you Monday night after the game. In the meantime, all weekend long, consume some Sinkers beverages. And if you get a little bored during the game because the Dolphins are up by 30, go to Kingston Group social accounts, buildkg.com's website, and go just peruse their beautiful luxury homes and custom model rebuilds and all that cool stuff. So go check that out. Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Stackingtheinbox.com if you want all the conversation that we just had about the offense. If you want to see it laid out in data form, go give Zach a few bucks and you're going to get some great coverage all week long this week, all the time for that matter. But
just so you guys know, I just got approved. My Senior Bowl credentials approved. Be heading down to the Senior Bowl with Stoney coming in end of January and February. We had some great coverage all week last year.
Can we get a 3-bedroom? Can we get a 3-bedroom?
3. We had a 4. I think we had a 4-bedroom last year, so we don't.
What's Stoney gonna say to me if I invite myself on the trip?
I don't know.
All right, boys. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for hanging out. Football and other F words, all the other sports, all the other shows from the 440 Sports Network covering the Preds, Nashville SC, all kinds of good content up there. SEC football as well. So go check that out. The 440 Sports YouTube page. Give us a sub. We do appreciate it. Share the show. Tell somebody about it. It's how we grow, and it's how we keep serving you guys here in the Nashville market. We do appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend. For Zach, I am Braden. We'll talk to you on Monday night.